Hello, my name is Gerardo Martinez. I'm a student at SNHU for the Computer Science Software Engineering program. My professor's name is Professor Stefanelli. Um, Today I'll be sharing the three files that I would be using to enhance through the capstone course for the software engineering. The three files from software design and engineering being option one, option two being algorithms and data structure, and the last and third option will be from data. And of course, I chose a SQL. But um, I'm going to explain my files and what they do and how I would be enhancing them. But I'll go on by explaining. This is a CPP file that I'll be using that was from a my reverse engineering class from CS 410. We were given a executable file, and we were then using a third party software to display assembly language code. Then we were to recreate the file, and based off what the file was performing on the assembly language, we were to compare and see the outputs and see if they were similar. So I was able to recreate one of the reverse engineering files and get this simple CPP file, which I will be using as one of my options here, as you can see here. And um, I'm also using a IDE that's an online IDE that allows me to write C++ language files or Java, Python from the, as you can see here from the top right corner. And I have the language set as C++, which this is what my file is from my CPP. So I'll go ahead and explain what the file does itself and what my enhancements will be, and as well as the functionalities and the code analytics. What am I going to target? Improving the areas such as structures, logic, efficiency, functionality, security, commentings, decoding, and I'll go ahead and walk through the walkthroughs as well as far as the enhancements. But as you can see here, this is a simple C++ file. And in the main here, I'm given, it has the integer set to password, and the password is 123. The string username I put as my name Gerardo, and the string user input is where we'll get the user's input. Now it starts with a print statement that greets a user with created by Gerardo Martinez, my name here, and then after that, it goes into a next print statement that it prints out, "Hello, welcome to our investment company," which was from the project file. Then it allows comes following that a enter username, where then a user is prompt to input the user input here, and given if the user input equals the username, which is Gerardo, he is then allowed access to go further into the system. Now he's then, I have a print statement here, and then there's another, it allows he or she to enter a password. And here the send statement gives him the option to enter the password here. Now in my case, my password is 123. I kept it simple. And if they were to then input the password, they will be greeted with if the password equals 123, access granted print statement. If the password was not equal to 123, then print statement will be access denied, invalid username or password. And just like every simple system we encounter where it doesn't specifically say the username or was wrong or the password was wrong, it says either or, making it a little more difficult for hackers to know which is wrong. So I also went with that route as access denied, invalid username / passwords. So once the user has access to the information, he then is prompted to three options, what he is allowed to do, or from what the simple file here does. He has options 1, 2, and 3, and those are integer values. If the user were to click on a choice. So it prompts the user with a "what would you like to do?" Print statement. And for the first option, if the user were to print if choice equals 1, and then it would give them a you chose 1 as far as the options, and it will display the client's information from, as you can see here, Bob Jones selected option 1, Sarah Davis selected option 2, and then here are the from the file itself, there were like 1 being brokerage and then 2 being retirement, as far as the from the data I was given in the other file. And if the user was to press option 2, he will be prompted with a enter the number of clients that you wish to change. And here, this is for option 2. It was really simple in that option. And then for option 3, a user would be prompted to choose just to exit the file, the file itself, the CPP file, and you chose option 3, which is, of course, when you chose that option, it just gets you a print statement and exits there. But what I plan to do with this file, I plan to encrypt this information. One thing I learned throughout secure coding was data at rest is kind of a is really it's a low end, high end thread where hackers can access it, and it's not a good thing to do. So what I plan to do here is I plan to use a third party software to encrypt this information here, and perhaps use and I also want to do is one thing through that class is what I learned was here the SYN value passwords. A lot of the times when when companies allow when they don't add limits to what a user can put, what that does, it can cause a buffer overflow, which can make the system crash. So I like to add a little bit of more security to this file by adding a get line, and then password, and limiting the user to maybe 20 characters that he or she is allowed to input. That way, there's no possible threat of a buffer overflow. And adding that security along with encryption key here for the data itself would make my file a little more complex, and improving the complexity of it, making it part of one of those enhancements. So along with that as well, with that, those two being part of what I plan to do here, I also like to add assertions. One thing I've learned also that assertions are really good demonstrations of showing what the file should be doing versus what it should not be doing. And if say, for example, if someone were to get a hold of the information, and for this case, like this here, if they were start messing with the file itself, then maybe an assertion can catch that and make the unwanted user exit the program, with say, and adding like a little more security to the file. So a few assertions that I plan to add here are maybe assertions or attempts as for a user to allow to input his or her username or password, limit them to like 2 or 3 times. That way it can add the security. Assertions would also explain to a developer what the file should be doing, what the file shouldn't be doing. So it also gives the person that's reading that the file itself, it gives him the visual of what the file should be doing and correctly versus what it shouldn't be doing incorrectly. And so those are the options I plan to do with this file to enhance it. One being encrypting the data itself. 2, limiting the input values for a user to apply input, causing buffer overflow. And 3, adding assertions, explaining what the file should be doing and what it should not be doing, and exit if it does what it's not supposed to be doing. Adding that little 3 extra layers of security here. So this is my CPP file, and this is what I plan to do with it. Now on to the next project. I'm also using that same IDE from the online, and as you can see top right here, I'm using Java. Now for this project itself, I'm going to explain through a pseudocode that I wrote for the project what the file is doing, and I'll go ahead and explain the structure of it and the inefficient or efficiency of the file and what I plan to do. So, so what this Java file was from the class of IT 145, a Java class, and we were to build a authentication system that prompts a user to input the information, and if they're granted access, I created a text file where it compared the user input to the text file. If the username and password were correct, then he will be allowed information and allowed into the system, and then go from there. And now each user was directed to, as you can see here, this is my credential text, which held the information. Like for example, I put my name for 101 Gerardo Martinez and the password, and if that was entered correctly, and it checked the text file, it gave me access granted. And depending what I put during that time was, it would say, welcome Gerardo Martinez, zookeeper or zoo vet. But I'll go ahead and display this pseudocode that I did for this file itself. So it goes on with displays information for user, prompts user for username if user entered quit, exit program. This was also part of the assignment, was to input that quit so that user can always exit the program. Prompt user for password if user enters quit, exit program. So there was another option right there as far as quitting the program itself. Loop, no more than 3 user authentication attempts, which limit the user for as far as attempting to enter the system. Loop, to determine user values and hash password to credential text. We use a hash here, the MD5, which is a security protocol, which is also always a good thing to do with your files. That way you can check any hash differences made, and for that extra layer of security. If username matches, declare username, convert a user enter password to hash password. If hash user entered hash password not found, loop and determine user value. Okay, so not found, prompt for credential re-enter. If max attempts reach, alert user to invalid entered credentials, exit program. Else hash user enter password is found, set user to authenticated, determine user role based on information from the credential text, that was part of the username, user passwords, and their title from the Zoo authentication. And then it will display a user method to display corresponding welcome file for row, and then of course exit program by user. So that's just a breakdown of what this file was doing. But what I've noticed through this file when I was first creating and taking Java, it seems a little bit too complicated, and what I plan to do here with this file, as the rubric says, as far as enhancements, I plan to remake this file in a C++ format. So using a CPP, recreating all this file code in a CPP file. So as part of what one of the enhancements is, I just decided to mess around with C++ a little bit more and just duplicating this file here, and also I'm also going to be using the hash table in the CPP file also as well. So all the information here that was given here, which I think seems a little too, for as far as one thing I've learned was, the more simple you keep the file, the better it is for anyone to understand what's going on and what can, improvements. Like as you can see here, there's a bunch of else statements. So if authentication success, system out print, do you want to log out? Yes, Y, and yes or no options to log out. And then there's an else statement, authentication equals false, Bolognese, use Bolognese here. And then attempts here, else equals so these are all kind of, it seems a little bit too complicated. There's too much ifs and whiles and breaks and if else, and it's just a little too complex. So what I plan to do, I do plan to duplicate this file again, in a CPP or C++ format, but keep it a little bit more simple and display the same information that this did. So what as one of the rubrics for the final for enhancements was using a language and transferring it to another language, in which I'll be doing this is Java itself, and I'll be using C++ for this same file. So I'll be building all this file in a C++ format using a CPP file, just to show that the enhancements will be recreating all this in a different language, as far as the rubrics explain. So this is my other second option. Now for my third option, which was for a SQL class, I am using a Word document here. So for my final project of SQL, we were given a few some tasks to show that we are able to work with SQL and show them that we know how to work and build tables, delete stuff, add columns, add rows, manipulate, alter the tables. So I'm going to go ahead and run through my SQL project final and what I did in the and now, because this was done through a SQL Codio, a third party that SNHU uses, since this was done through that, what I did for my final project was I just copied the output that was performed, but it shows all the, as you can see, it shows all the code that I used to create that. So that way the professor knew that I was inputting the correct information and that all this was input correctly. The only way, one of the ways was he explained was during that class was just copy the output into a Word document, because you couldn't really download the file, the file of SQL, because those were just commands being input to create those tables. So I'll begin with task one here. Task one, I was supposed to using insert into function, person being the table, first name, last name from the columns here. I put the values. My name's Gerardo Martinez. Gerardo being the first values for the first name, Martinez for the last name here. Now, you're always supposed to align the stuff that you're supposed to put in the tables with the values itself. So, for example, the person could have been last name and first name here, and I could have let that Gerardo Martinez, and it would have been incorrect. So that was task one, and the output here was, of course, my name and the from what he was given, the Gerardo Martinez here. For task two, I had to alter table person. I had to add date of birth to the table itself. So I was expanding the knowledge of already what I've done here, and I added date of birth. And whenever there is a new column that's added to a table that's been there, it's given the null value. As you can see here from the previous people that were in the table, it has Michael Phelps, Katie Leduc, Usain Bolt. These were all provided by the tables that were there for the Codio, but here these were all given null values, because that's an option to put information into the table. As you can see from my task 3 here, so I update person set date of birth. Now this is my date of birth that was at that moment where was displayed 1987 910. Where first name, now this is where it gets my information to put the date into the date of birth, Gerardo, and it compares that to the table, and last name Martinez. So it compares that, and if it finds it on the table, it puts that into the date of birth value here. Now you can see here, it wasn't null, because that's when I put it, and then I showed an output, and then it has the null values because they haven't had any of their information input to the table itself. From task 4, I was told to delete from the person table. Now this is where you get word first name, Kevin, last name Durant, it compares that to the values of the table, um, and it deletes it. So I didn't show the deletion of that after that. I don't think that was part of the. But as you see, okay, one row affected. This shows that the task was performed correctly. And from task 5 also, I altered a table. And in this case, the table is contact list. So I add favorites and var character not know here. And what it does here, it now I select from I grab the contact list. I select from in the table itself, and I'll print the statement here. So it adds this. What this does, I added 14 rows affected of not know. So this is what the output was here. Task 6 was update contact list. Set favorites equals Y. As you can see here, there was the connection ID, person, contacts, now favorites, which corresponds with this row column. They're all Y. So that's what that did, this function here for this task. For task 7, update contact list, we're still messing with contact list. We set favorite to N where contact ID equals 1. So what that did was we went even further. So instead of manipulating a few of the things where we went here and it changed 11 rows here and added someone to, as you can see, contact ID where it equals 1, it added them to the N instead of the Y value. And it explains how many rows were affected. For task 8, insert contact list, now we're using insert into the contact list table, person ID, contact ID, favorite values. Here we're adding values, additional values, 79W, 28N, 47W. So, and now we just added to, well, we already have 14. We added these values, and what it does, it expands the information that we can put into the tables that we have already. And these values correspond to these like open person ID, course had to correspond to the first value here. Contact ID, which is the second parameter, it corresponds to the second value here. Just like previously where my name, Gerardo Martinez, it had to correspond correctly with the parameters that were on being called. And of course, favorites, so W, N, and W here. And you can see the information was input into the table that was created early on. And now here I created a table named image, and this is the table created from the beginning. So increment, not know. I use auto increment, not know, and then right here what I added was image ID, image name, image location, primary key, image ID, and as you can see, from my show tables, here is the image here. The table was created. It was added to the list of tables that I have. I had contact list, image, message, persons. Here I created another table where it shows the message, image, and of course what the information I have for that table is message ID, and of course their integer and primary key, message ID, image ID. So there I put these two values, and now I go to the command of the terminal where it shows tables, and now you see that the message image table is added to the list. So I went from having 4 to having 5 tables here. So tasks 11 and 12 here, insert image into the image table, image name, image location, values. I put, okay, so these were some of the values that I put into the image name, which was trees, lakes, mountains, cars, pyramids, and image location were California, Michigan, Pennsylvania, New York, and Egypt. These were some of these were all given by the professor to perform, adding these corresponding to like tree to California, lakes to Michigan. And then I will show the select from image, the table itself, and you will see that these were all trees were put into image ID, California image name, image ID was 1, and then trees to image name, and in California to image location. So these were all things that I performed for this final. And then as you can see here, insert into message, image, message, and these message image is the table. Into the columns message ID, image ID, the values 141528341222, and I would display the table here. And this is this is the table itself. This is the new table. This is the table. I would display that table with message ID and message image ID, and those values that I put there 1415, they came into the table, showing that I was able to perform those. So these were all tasks that were asked for the final to perform, to show that we knew how to perform certain SQL functions. And so from the rubric for the capstones, what I plan to do, it asked to use more advanced concepts of MySQL. So what I plan to do, I plan to use inner and outer joins. From what I've read, they're very they're a little more difficult to perform. I plan to use count, and I plan to use excuse me. I plan to use sort. So I'll be sorting data, and you inner and outer joins. You join tables together, making it a little more of an advanced SQL performance, a little more complex in the and then count as well as being one of more of the advanced concepts of MySQL. And the sort, I'll be able to perform that as well by sorting out data. Maybe reduplicate all these data here and sorting them by alphabetically order or numeric values here, as you can see, based on connection ID or person ID. So that's what I plan to do with MySQL. I plan to use a third-party software that I've been looking over to create these, to recreate all this and recreate the new advanced concepts of MySQL, so that I can submit those for my concepts, so for my capstone enhancements. So as I mentioned here, those are my three design product files that I'll be working with for the software design and engineering, and algorithm and data structure and database for my capstone. And these were all the files that I had from the previous classes, and I will be and then I will go forward and enhancing them and explaining what I did and what was performed. That way, Professor Stefanelli can see what I did enhancing all these. But as I mentioned, my name is Gerardo Martinez for the SNHU capstone class under Professor Stefanelli, and this is my code review for all three files. Thank you so much.